It does take time to get there, but just be yourself. Try not to compare yourself to other people. And I would say surround yourself with other people who get it as well, because it can be lonely being in business by yourself.
Hello and welcome to the Driven Female Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Melitta Campbell, award-winning business coach, value whisperer and founder of the Dream Clients Blueprint, the proven system that guides you in defining, communicating and selling your true value with ease and authenticity, so you can create an income, business and lifestyle that you love and feel proud of the positive impact you are creating. Each week on this show, I share business building wisdom from my own experiences and those of a range of successful women. My aim is to help you dream bigger and achieve more by learning from what works and gaining actionable tools, tips and insights from women who are building a range of amazing businesses. If you've ever felt overwhelmed trying to get your business out there on social media, you will love today's discussion with social media strategist Anita Popat. Anita specializes in helping business owners create introvert-friendly Instagram and LinkedIn strategies that are built on purpose-led foundations, content that speaks to your perfect people, and making the tech easy so you can get clients without draining your time and energy. Hi Anita, it's great to have you on the show with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We haven't spoken about social media for a while on the show, so I'm excited to dive in, and you're a specialist in Instagram and LinkedIn. So I'm really curious because they're quite different. So I'm interested to learn more about your experience using those two platforms together. Before we dive into that, I would love it if you could share with the audience a little bit about your brand story and how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So I have been in the social media world for the best part of, let's say, 13 years now. So I'm a crafter by trade. So when I got married and I was in a house with like two men and they just wanted to watch Sky Sports all day. So I was like, oh, I'm not spending my evenings doing this. What else can I do? So I've always loved making things and crafting. And one of my best mates had just had a little girl. So I'm like, I'm going to make her a little present. So then I was just online Facebook in those days, and there was loads of people making handmade items. So I was looking at that for inspiration, and I thought, oh, I'm going to have a go at making this. And I still remember it was a little wooden letter, an initial with a little teddy bear on it, with her baby's details on it. And I thought, oh, I'm going to try and sell this and see what happens. So I literally just made a Facebook page, put a picture up of the thing, and then people started asking me if they could buy it. And then before I know it, I had like a little product range selling handmade items for babies and kids. So I did that for the best part of, 9 years, literally selling on, building an audience and selling on Facebook. And then obviously I moved on to Instagram. And then all of this was done as a side hustle while I was doing my day job as a marketing manager. So I can't remember a day when I didn't have like something on the side. So I'd do my day job 9 to 5, and then I'd come home and do like, I don't know, when it was Christmas time, I'd be painting like signs until 4 in the morning and things like that. It was crazy. But because I really, really enjoyed doing it, I guess it was the adrenaline that kept me going. But obviously, while I was doing all of this, people saw that I was gaining traction, I was gaining like clients, I was getting lots of orders, doing stuff. And people just naturally asked me, like, how are you doing this? How are you getting clients from like social media, essentially? And I just used to help them, help people out, because I used to get really excited that people actually wanted to learn from me, because I thought everyone could do it. I'm just like, I'm just putting pictures up and talking to people. But I realized later on that that doesn't come as easy, or it's not as natural to people as it was to me. So I kind of planted the seed early on that I'd love to do this full time one day, but I never quite got the courage to sort of leave my corporate role and sort of do it full time. But then I had a really good manager who, she was like, okay, I can see that you want to do this. Why can you do it for our company? And she literally gave me, I was the marketing, like one person marketing manager. So I was responsible for everything. So everything that comes with the banner of marketing. We created our own networking event. I set up all the socials from scratch, which is where LinkedIn comes in. So then obviously for my corporate role, I started building my personal brand on LinkedIn alongside all of my Instagram and stuff. So I've always had, even though they're quite different, LinkedIn sort of fulfills my sort of networking and the more writer side, because I tend to do more written style posts on there. Instagram is always going to be my first love. It sort of helps me stay in touch with the creative community, but also I like things to look nice and pretty, and Instagram is obviously very visual, so it helps you on that side. But I think the important thing for both of them is that my clients are on both of these platforms. So although they're nice to have and I like being on them, I'm on them because essentially my clients are on there as well. And it's a platform I like to hang out on, but also my clients like to hang out on as well. So that's why I chose those two.
I think you touched on a great point there, because I get this question all the time. Where should I be on social media? Where should I start? And like you say, I always advise start where you hang out and where your clients hang out. And if it's fun for you and it's somewhere where your clients are already, then just that you just need to get then more purposeful about what you're posting, but you're already comfortable and familiar. It's not worth like being on Instagram and then starting all over again, learning a new platform if you're already there and enjoying it. So your business today, are you still doing the crafts?
No, so I'm going up to my 4th year now. I had to go all in on this. So I listened to your podcast with Trish and I had my like sort of 60 seconds of courage and I left my corporate role, which is very unlike me. I was like, right, what have I got to lose? I've been saying I want to do this for literally years. I'm just going to bite the bullet and do it. So I on a whim, I literally just wrote my notice and gave it to my manager the day after. And with no real plan, I had my craft stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll just do that and see what happens while I set this consulting business up. But then it just so happens that I went to a workshop that was sort of business basics. And all the women in there were literally just startups. And I was just advising them as I would, like I do now. And they're all like, oh my God, you really need to do this full time. Like, you're so good. And I'm just like, oh, okay. You just don't think you know what you know because it comes naturally to you. I was like, okay, maybe you have got something in this. So then I just set up like my profiles and started consulting. And then the craft stuff is like, no, the pages are there, but I don't do that enough because I feel like you need to go all in. If you're going to try and make a success of it, I need to have like my blinkers on and just focus on this. So that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, I love that. And my clients will laugh at me saying this because it's my favorite saying, but it's always, you can't ride two horses with one ass. You just have to, you just have to focus. And I'm always reminding myself of that. Most people who start their own business, particularly if they have a creative background, they have so many ideas. I'm always having so many ideas. And now I have someone in my business, someone in my team who helps with all my marketing and digital work. And they're always rating me, no, well, let's just do one idea first. Yeah, thank you.
It's so hard when you're creative. I resonate with that so much, especially when you're starting out. I feel like you get the whole shiny object syndrome thing. So you're like, oh, okay, this person's doing that, so I need to do that. And then you scroll a bit more and this person's telling me to do that, so I need to do that. Because if you don't have like a coach or mentor early on, which most people don't have, it's hard to sort of figure out what your what your path should be, because you're kind of taking bits and bobs from what you see other people doing and trying to like mangle it all together. So I think you do need a bit of like trying bits. Like you need to have a bit of an open mind and sort of like fail and keep trying it. Yeah, you need the resilience to sort of try things out. You never know what's going to work out, and you never know the things you think aren't going to work out, which I often find the things I just think, oh, let me just put that out there and see what happens. They normally end up being like really cool and like have legs. Like the content collab sessions I do, they just came out of a conversation, and I'm just like, oh, I didn't know. I'm just going to see what happens. And they've been running like for a good couple of years now. But then there might be other things that I've done and I put out and they just don't work, which is fine. But it's the whole like learning from them and not thinking that you're a failure thing that we need to sort of get over as well.
Do you think having a marketing background helps with that? Because what I see with my clients who don't really know much about marketing is that they are worried about trying something and failing, and they're looking at what everyone else is doing and feeling, oh, I have to do all of these things. Whereas having had a marketing background, I know it is an art. You have to put something out and it doesn't always work, and that's part of the process. And often you'll do something and it works brilliantly and then suddenly it stops working, and that's normal. But I think if you're coming at this for the first time and things aren't working, then you think, oh, it's me. It's not that that's part of the process. So do you think that background has helped you a little bit? And what has helped you with the resilience to keep going when things don't work?
Yeah, to be fair, I hadn't actually thought of that, but now you mention it, maybe it has, because we're always in marketing, you always talk to sort of test and learn. Like whether it's even with like different headlines or different images, we're always testing different things against each other. So I guess again, that's one of the things we as marketers just naturally do because it's part of like how we're taught to test things. But yeah, I agree. I guess if when we're working with clients from a young age, we're taught to do things right first time or like not make mistakes and don't like, if you do things wrong, there's going to be consequences. So I guess people aren't used to going in with the mentality that we're just going to test and see what happens. It's always going to be like, oh, I need to get this right. So sometimes that in itself puts pressure on you to do the thing right, essentially, and not have the sort of create the headspace to think about it more creatively. If that makes sense? Because you're so pressured into thinking this has to work, this has to go right. So then you don't give yourself enough time. And it takes up a lot of energy as well as an introvert. Like the whole overthinking and thinking and the pressure to get things right first time is it's not a good thing.
Yeah. And one thing that I quite enjoyed about social media is that it is a wonderful place to experiment and play because you show up, you do something, oh, that's interesting. Nobody cared about that. Let's try this other way. And so I think maybe that creative background has helped me to see it in that respect. But I see a lot of my clients coming in like, oh, well, I couldn't put this out until I know people are going to like it. I was like, well, you don't know they're going to like it until you put it out. You need to think it the other way around. So you do need that courage to get started in the first place. What advice would you give people who are maybe they're more introverted, they're overthinking, or just worried about that judgment? Then what's your advice around that?
Yeah, so first thing is that I totally get that. It's totally normal. And no one's judging you as much as you're judging yourself. And I feel like that's easy for me to say, and it's something I had to get over as well. But what the thing that helped me was like at the beginning, I said I had to go all in with blinkers on. So I had to kind of almost separate myself from the business and say, this is me and this is my business. So I'm showing up for my business. And for my business to succeed, for people to get to know who I am, I need to show up as I am. And I'm not saying that was easy, but what helps is, like we said before, making sure you go onto a platform that you actually like using. Because if you're forcing yourself to go on like LinkedIn, for example, and you absolutely hate being there, you might go on there for like a month or so, but then you're gonna like burn out and you're not gonna have the right energy. And I feel like your energy comes across when when you're writing posts and the way you're interacting, it just comes across in how you write. You don't want to give off that negative energy to your audience because you're not going to attract the kind of people that you want to try and attract to essentially work with you. So the first thing would be to try and separate yourself as like your human being to the business, and then go onto a platform that you actually enjoy being on, but also one where your ideal client is likely to hang out as well. And like you said, choose one thing and try and master that thing, and then like go on to the next thing. And then have a clear message like, what's your purpose? Why are you doing what you're doing? Because that's going to fuel you and sort of give you the motivation to get your message out. And think of it from like a serving mindset. You're here to serve your audience rather than sell. Like I'm not here to, yeah, I want to make money. I've got a business, so I want to get clients. But when I'm online and I'm creating content, the mindset I'm in is, what do my audience need to hear from me? How can I get them to, like we're talking about getting over the fear of judgment? What can I say to them? What kind of content can I share that's going to take them from feeling that they're going to be judged to actually putting a post out there? So what kind of things can I say to them that's going to help them feel like it's okay, nothing's going to happen, no one's going to judge you. What kind of content can I create that's going to educate them, inspire them, or motivate them to do the thing? And that will bring your like engagement, your likes, comments, and things in. And when you start to get interaction, I think it just naturally spurs you on to create more content and show up every
Yeah,
day.
absolutely. Yeah, I think you really hit on something there with separating yourself as the business owner and yourself personally. It takes a bit of time and practice to do that, but it can really make a difference. But when you're putting yourself out there as your business persona, your personal brand, how can you do that and avoid being too salesy? Because sometimes you think, oh, now I'm business owner, I have to sell, sell, sell. So, which we know doesn't work on social media. Social media should be social. It's not necessarily where you sell. it's where you start to build those relationships. So is there any, you mentioned there, you advise people to go on and serve, think about what does my audience need to hear from me today? Is there anything else in that space that can help us to stay focused on our message and not go after those shiny objects, but really stay in that service mentality and avoid that temptation to sell? Because I think a lot of people on social media are doing the sales thing. And so when we're looking at what others are doing for inspiration, we're not necessarily looking in the right places and we're getting bad information. And so, yeah, how can we make sure we stay in that service mentality?
So the first thing I would say is, especially as LinkedIn, treat it as like a massive networking room. So when you're online, before you start typing, think, would I say this to someone in real life? So on LinkedIn, for example, a classic example would be if someone connects with you, would you go to a networking event, stand in front of someone and say, hi, I'm Anita, this is what I've got, buy my thing, buy my thing. Or would you come up to them and say, so that's effectively like a pitch slap on LinkedIn when you connect with someone and they send you a salesy DM straight away. Or would you go up to someone, connect with them and say, hi, how are you? How's your day going? You know, what made you attend this event or something like that? That's the kind of mentality I have when I'm on social media. As you said, social media is for being social. So first, think that there's a human behind that name. So go in, just build some rapport, just be yourself and sort of before you type, just think, would I say this to someone in real life when you're engaging? So that's my tip when you're sort of engaging or when you're writing comments on under posts. But when it comes to sort of your content, yeah, we do need the promotional posts and do need to tell people how to buy from you, but there's loads of different ways you can do that without feeling icky. So I'm a big fan of sort of sharing case studies. So you're not directly saying like, oh, look at me, because some people feel a bit like, oh, I don't want to share like testimonials or things because they feel like they're bragging. But if you share, but you still need to let your audience know, you know, how people can work with you and how you sort of get people results. So case studies are a good way for you to showcase that. So you're kind of telling people, you're kind of painting a picture of the kind of person you work with. So then if there's someone in your audience who sort of matches that persona, that's a kind of a hand raiser to say, okay, like, yeah, this lady sounds like me. Yeah, tick. And then the next thing could be like how you sort of frame the problem that they came to you for. So then if someone else resonates with that, that's another tick. And then you kind of take them, use a bit of storytelling and sort of take them to the journey as to how you got them to the end destination. And then I would normally share like a screenshot or something of a screenshot from the client who's actually said the same thing. So it's not just me like writing about them. I've also got sort of what you call social proof, like a screenshot of their words to add a bit of credibility. So I think that's a nice way. And sharing sort of results that you get in terms of sort of if you do like Facebook ads or if a client's got a big client as a result of the work you've done for them. I'm also a big fan of, so on Instagram you have stories, which LinkedIn did have for a little while, but they haven't anymore. So stories are like the behind the scenes thing that lasts for 24 hours. So another way to sort of kind of sell without selling is literally just documenting your day and showing what you're doing. So if I'm working on like content creation or I don't know, if I'm in Canva, like making images for clients or something, I might just say, oh, I'm doing this today, or I'm doing that today. And that again shows people that I'm doing what I say I'm doing. So you're kind of indirectly telling people what you do all the time without actually saying, here, buy my stuff. But you're kind of softly saying, this is what I do and it's here if you want it. That makes sense.
So when it comes to reels and stories and all these videos, it's something that I have resisted personally because it just feels so overwhelming. I was like, well, how am I going to do my work if I have to like, hey, I'm doing work now the whole time?
Yeah.
How do you manage creating the content and being present on social media enough to have that consistency without going completely insane?
So batch creating is your best friend. I'm a big believer in not only with, so being an introvert as well, like energy management is really key. So like doing things like video, it drains a lot of energy. So I'll have like video days and non-video days. So when I'm feeling like high energy, I'll have, so let's take reels, for example. I'll make sure that I know what kind of reels I want to create. So I'll research my audio, I'll have a rough sort of bullet points of like the kind of points I want to make on it. So then I know what kind of video I need to make for that. So then when I'm feeling high energy and I've planned the work in my diary, I know exactly what I need to create. So that doesn't take much energy. And I'm doing it all in one go. So then I'm not doing like one video here and one video there. Because reels, like the maximum you can have is like 1 minute 30. And no, like the longest I do is like maybe 30 to 60 seconds. So they're not long. So even if you give yourself half an hour, providing you've done the pre-planning before, you can easily batch like a month's worth of reels if you wanted to. But then reels, you don't have to always show your face. You can use your brand images and do like slideshows. You can use quotes over like Twitter style quotes over like a nice scene, or you can sort of again document your day. So you don't always have to show your face. But if you did want to, which I would obviously encourage everyone to do because it's the quickest way to build connection, batch creating is definitely a good way to manage the consistency and your energy.
And I think you said the magic word there, planning. What does it look like to have a social media plan?
What does it look like? So social media, it will save you so much time because and it'll just give you the headspace, and it will save you from, you know how I said you need to have like a focus. We both said we need to have a clear focus as to where we're going. So especially on social media, when you're just doom scrolling, you think, oh, I don't know what to post today. I'm just gonna go down my feed and see what comes up and see if I can get some inspiration. Now that's either going to give you some inspiration, or you're just gonna be like, oh my god, like this person's already said what I wanted to say, so I can't say that again. Or this person's like said it like this, so oh maybe I need to say it like that. So having a social media plan sort of keeps you on track. And once you know what your end purpose is, all your content's going to be intentional because you've got your plan and you know what it's leading to. By giving yourself that time, you're going to really think about your content and your messaging and like what the next step is. And you can even schedule it out when you've got a plan as well, so that when you're scrolling sort of down your feed, you're not distracted by what other people are doing because you know, okay, I've got my content, I know who it's speaking to, exactly who it's speaking to, I know where it's leading to, and I'm happy. And I can sort of, and it's all scheduled out, so I can get on with my day, either interacting with like my ideal clients on Instagram or social media, or I can sit and have an evening to watch Netflix if I want to.
So it gives you the freedom. I love that.
Yeah,
So what needs
definitely.
to be on the plan? Is it just a case of these are the themes I'm going to do on these days, or does it need to be more complex from that? I'm just quite conscious that I think when it comes to planning, a lot of people aren't quite sure where to start and therefore overthink and therefore don't start.
Yeah. So the first thing you need to think about is like how often do you want to show up on your social media platform? So it doesn't have to be every day. Like quality and consistency is better than like every day. So like if you're showing up every day for a month and then like for a few months you're just not on there and then you might show up again, that's no good. If you can maintain, like I normally say 3 times a week, so you're consistently showing up in your ideal clients' feeds, that's better than sort of showing up every day for like a length of time and then not showing up at all. So the first thing is to sort of figure out how often do you want to show up, and then it's like, okay, what, so I normally do it in like monthly chunks. So what's my focus for the month? So just say I've got a particular service that I want to try and get people onto. Let's say I've got my group program. So I'm like, okay, all of my content is going to be geared towards my group program. So that's going to be like the call to action. So the call to action is like what you want people to do next. And then there's sort of different types of content. So rather than saying buy my stuff, you want to mix up. So you want to have a mix of like storytelling type content. So like personal stories so people can connect with you, or a personal story relating to your client. So you're not basically saying what everyone else in your field is saying, what kind of angle that you can bring in to make it different. You want some sort of content that's like a quick win or educational or like a tip or something that someone can just take away to show your credibility and like to show that you know what you're talking about. Your promotional stuff, so the buy my stuff does also need to go in there as well. And then kind of just, and I'm a big fan of sort of screenshots of testimonials of people actually saying how good you are, or you showing like your credibility in some way. So I teach like having a mix of content that all, so that kind of says the same thing but in different ways, because I find people will either do too much like value-based stuff, so like hints and tips and educational stuff, which is good. But they don't tell people like how can they buy from you, or they'll do too much buy my stuff kind of thing and not enough of the community building and nurturing and educational stuff. So think of it, figure out how often you want to be on there, and then just do a mix of posts to take people from like your follower to a client. So when they're a follower, they might not know who you are. So what kind of content are you going to create to take them on the journey to help them know, like, trust you essentially?
Yeah, I love that. Thinking of it as a journey. And when you mix up your content, and of course you can use the same message, but from different angles. So you don't have to come up with as much content. You can say, okay, how many different ways could I share this message? In a video, long form, short form, a quote that's inspired by it. You can start to get creative, and that keeps things interesting for you and for the audience. And you mentioned there to put out posts that show people how they can buy from you. So we talked earlier about not being salesy and buy my stuff, but we do have to have some of that content. Is there a recommended balance in that respect?
I'd say like 80-20. So make 80% of it like value. So like hints, tips, storytelling, the whole like nurture type of content, help them get to know you and figure out like, okay, this is the person that I want to work with. And then the 20% would be, okay, well, this is the kind of content where it's like, okay, well, this is what I have to offer. Do you want to buy it? I'm not a fan of like buy this now kind of stuff. I'm more of a, if this is the right time for you, you can buy it. So you can still like do salesy stuff. Like at the end of every post, you could write like, by the way, if this is something you want help with, I've got this many spots open or something like that. I mean, at the end of every post, you could, and when I do carousels on LinkedIn or Instagram, so the carousels are like the posts where you can swipe through, you could have a slide at the end that kind of says, oh, by the way, I've got this offering, send me a message if you want to know more. So you're kind of indirectly selling, but you're not like directly putting a post up saying I'm selling this thing.
Yeah, great tips. Thank you. And you mentioned right at the very beginning that throughout, you're on Instagram and LinkedIn, and those are two very different platforms. What led your decision to be on those two? And is it difficult managing the different style of content across the two?
No, so yeah, they're both very different, but they've both sort of fulfilled two things that I really like. So Instagram is very creative and very arty. It's where I started my craft business. So like it fulfills the visual things because I like things to look nice and pretty. Whereas LinkedIn, like to be fair, it's not getting too dissimilar to Instagram now because it's got carousels and video and lives and things now as well. But I use LinkedIn much more for the written stuff, so more mini blog type stuff because I feel like those kind of posts do much better on there for me. So the main reason for being on both of them was because my clients are on both of them. So on LinkedIn, I'd obviously, before I started working for myself, I had a big network. I used to run my own networking events as well. So I had a big network of people who I could potentially work with or who could refer me to other people. So it would be silly to ignore that group of people who are essentially like your cheerleaders. And I've since sort of built relationships with people like yourself. I think we met on LinkedIn as well, didn't we? Yeah, people like yourself on there and communities sort of relating to introversion and just like topics that I'm interested in general. And then Instagram, that's again another community of solopreneurs are quite strong on there, which are my ideal clients as well. So, and I like creating the more visual stuff as well. So that feels that side. So they're a bit like chalk and cheese, but they're kind of merging now as well. And in terms of content, to be fair, like Instagram has carousels and LinkedIn has carousels as well. So I kind of, even the sizing used to be different now, but it's not anymore. So I will literally just repurpose the same thing, maybe changing the end slide that's got my contact details on it, or the call to action that says, rather than saying link in bio, I might just say send me a message or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. I used to have to create like more sort of, I found Twitter and LinkedIn sizing of imaging more similar, and Instagram was completely different. However, now it seems that Instagram imaging fits everywhere, even on Twitter as well now. So it's interesting to see how the platforms are standardizing in terms of certain aspects of the content, but still the focus of their audience and their purpose remains different. So it's interesting to see how they're always evolving. Which brings me on to another question. How do you keep up with all of the changes? Because that's one thing that is definitely overwhelming with social media, that, we talked earlier about with marketing, how something that you did has been working brilliantly and then suddenly it doesn't. But that can be accelerated on social media because it's not your audience that's changing, it's the platform and their rules that change on top of everything else. Any advice on how to keep up with that?
So I follow, if you're on social media, you can follow your industry leaders because they all obviously share updates. But I obviously, because I work in this field, I'm kind of obsessed. I'm in groups and things that share sort of news and updates regularly and stuff. On my email list, I'll filter out the ones that I think will be relevant to my audience, and I'll share them with my audience so they're always up to date. So my advice would be to follow people who like you look up to in the field, and they will more often than not sort of get rid of all the stuff that you don't need to hear and sort of give you the things that they think will be relevant to you. Because I feel like sometimes you can share too much updates and it just overwhelms people, like you say. Because on Instagram, for example, when reels came out, everyone was like, oh my god, I need to create reels, and photos aren't going to do well anymore. So then people felt overwhelmed with that side. But now obviously, and maybe like a year later, the head of Instagram's come back and say, okay, maybe we did put too much emphasis on reels, and we're going to bring back the same amount of leverage on photos. So everyone's gone back to like carousels and photos again, and reels views are down. So I feel like, yeah, there's updates there, but use don't let that stop you from posting. You need to be aware of them, so follow your industry leaders. But at the end of the day, like, your audience, and look at your data and see what your audience are responding to and what kind of things they like from you. So I do create reels, but I don't create that many, because looking at my data, my audience enjoy carousels and sort of Twitter star quotes and things like that that are more inspirational. So I'll do more of that. So at the end of the day, yeah, there's always going to be social media algorithms and trends are always going to be here. But my main piece of advice would be to listen to your audience, look at your data and see what they're telling you, and give them more of what they like, and you'll naturally sort of do well. You'll do well if you just go with that advice.
And I think that's going right back to marketing basics, isn't it? Like, know your purpose, know your audience. And once you know that, and keep it simple, once you know those three things or those two things and keep it simple, you don't need to know anything else. You don't need to worry too much. You're just there with your audience and keep in touch with them so that you can grow with their preferences. And they'll want more from you as they get to know more about you, and their relationship with you develops as well. So that's the only thing you really need to listen to is your audience over everything else. But I like that hack of don't worry about keeping up with the updates, just keep up with the people who keep up with the updates.
Yeah, yeah, because like people like me, I'll get all of them obviously because I'm in the social media. So there's literally like something every day. But if my ideal client is not in the social media world, that's going to be overwhelm them, and they're just going to switch off from my content. And I don't want them to switch off because they're just going to be like, oh, Anita will just share updates all day. I want them to look at my other content as well. So there's a fine balance, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Anita, you shared so much value. I've really loved all of this. Is there anything that you feel is really important for every business owner to understand about social media, to be able to do that confidently without feeling judged or salesy, and regardless of whether they're introverted or not, that you think if they all knew this, they would just thrive?
Everyone says this, but it's be yourself. I know it's easier said than done, but like when you're starting out, especially as an introvert as well, you go onto social media and you see all of these extroverted personalities, like maybe like, oh my God, buy my stuff or do this or do that. And everyone just sounds really confident. And when I first started out, I was the same as well. I felt like, okay, like I need to really ramp it up. And that's not my natural personality. It's only when I literally like only a year or so ago, I started showing more of me, my personality, and literally just saying, okay, this is me, take it or leave it kind of thing, is when I started to really feel comfortable in my content. It connected more with my audience, and I just naturally like attracted the kind of people I wanted to work with. So my audience was getting filled with sort of ideal clients, and people were paying me just because they said, oh, I saw you share this story about yourself, or I saw you say this, which is why I wanted to work with you. So I know it's easy for people to say, and it does take a long time to get there, but just be yourself. Try not to compare yourself to other people. And I would say surround yourself with other people who get it as well, because it can be lonely being in business by yourself. But if you're, and especially when you're in the social media game, if you're on your own, the whole comparisonitis thing and fear of judgment thing comes up a lot. If you've got a nice group of cheerleaders who are maybe in the same industry, or you've got a group of people who you can just work with or check in with on like a weekly or daily basis to tell you how wonderful you are, that makes all of the difference.
Yeah, brilliant advice. And I agree. And I love that you shared there that be yourself, but give yourself the space and the grace to discover what your authentic voice is and how you like to show up and connect with other people. And it does take time, and it took me a long time as well. But I felt like I had a bit of a win for the introverts because my style definitely is quieter than some of the other entrepreneurs out there. But then I got named by LinkedIn as one of the top sales influencers to follow, but also one of the most authentic contributors on the platform. And that was like a big win for me. But then more recently, I was invited by Grant Cardone, I mean, one of the biggest, boldest, most out there entrepreneurs in the world.
Yeah.
And he invited me, he found me through social media and through my online presence and invited me to be a judge at one of his events. And he just picked 100 people from around the world. So I was very privileged to be part of that. But I thought, yeah, go introverts. We can be
Yeah,
noticed.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And yeah, since I've sort of started to talk about the introverts and sort of position myself as being a social media coach for introverts, it's amazing the opportunities that have come up just by sort of serving in the space. And it comes from a true passion. Like I'm genuinely, because I have been one all my life, I genuinely want to help other people sort of like show up as themselves on social media and say, it's not a bad thing, it's good.
Absolutely. And as you say, once you start showing up more of yourself and you find your feet and your confidence in that space, you do start to attract more of the people that resonate with that. And that's where, we all want more clients, but we don't want to just work with anyone, just the people that are our perfect clients, those people that we love showing up for, they love everything that we do. And then you can just create such magic. But sometimes we feel under pressure, I just need clients. We need to remind ourselves that we will need the right clients, and showing up as yourself is how you find those clients, and much more easily than ever before. So it's great, and it's lovely to see that that's working for you too.
Yeah, otherwise it just gets draining, doesn't it? Being like, you be yourself, everyone else is taken. That's the quote, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And as introverts, you have to manage your energy, but at the same time you need to show up with energy, so focusing on those right things that you do feel passionate about makes that easy. So yeah. Anita, I love everything that you've shared, and I know you've got a tool or a PDF that you can share with people to help them with this process. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
So I've just created a PDF that shares sort of 5 simple ways you can show up online as an introvert. So if you're scared of people judging you, or you don't know quite where to start, I'd love for you to download it, and hopefully it helps you set up on the right track.
Wonderful. So I'll put that link in the show notes. And thank you so much for sharing that with the audience. I'm sure people will be snapping that up because, it's always this thing. You want to be on social media, you want to be there and build these relationships. But then you're thinking, how do I do that? How can I talk about my business without being salesy? How do I put myself out there when I'm scared about these different things? And I love all the advice that you've shared so far on how we can manage that, to remind ourselves as well that people aren't judging us anywhere near as much as we're judging ourselves. I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's a tough one to get over, but once you do, I promise, like, it'll make everything better and just more fun. You want business to be fun, and you don't want it to be hard.
Yeah, exactly. And once you start, then you realize, oh, that's not so bad.
Yeah, not at all. Well, I think once you've nailed your purpose and you know who you're speaking to, it makes everything much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, one thing on the credibility point that I didn't mention earlier, but I think it's perhaps worth mentioning, is that when people apply to this show, I do check out their online presence, I check out their social media. And if they're not posting consistently, then I don't invite them onto the show because if they're not showing up for their audience, I'm not sure how well they'll show up for my audience. And so it made it easy to invite you onto the show because you're so consistent and out there sharing value. And so I knew you'd be sharing value here on this show. But my point is, in being consistent, it's not just for you and your audience. You never know what other opportunities are there looking at your content. So showing up consistently, and as you say, that consistently doesn't need to mean every single day, but just on a regular basis, so that you are serving your audience, and that does get noticed. And like I showed, it got me noticed, and it gets me noticed a lot from different organizations and thought leader media opportunities and all sorts of things that come up my way simply because I'm being consistent. So yeah, plan it out, see what's possible for you, give it a try, and have some fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. Thank you for saying that as well. I really appreciate that. You just reminded me of another thing as well, if I may. So there's people who are watching your content and they might not sort of like anything or comment on anything, but when they're ready, they'll reach out to you and buy from you. So I saw a stat the other day that said sort of 99% of customers are normally lurkers. So that's another reason to be consistent on social media. So even though you think you're putting stuff out there and no one's watching, people are watching. And most of my clients are lurkers, like they've never interacted with anything, but they'll just pop up in my DM and say, oh, I want to work with you. And when I ask them, like, okay, like, where did you find me? They'll normally say, oh, I've been following you for like a good 6 months, like you said, like been checking you out and stuff. So that's another reason, like, just because people aren't sort of actively engaging, don't let that put you off from being consistent as well, because people are watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can totally confirm that. So often I'm out networking and people will say, oh, I loved when you put this post out there and I did this training of yours and I read this blog and I listened to your podcast. It's like, wow, so many people are out there having this incredible relationship with me and my content, but they don't put their hand up and publicly share that. And, that's fine. I'm happy that they're getting the value that they need. But it's interesting that it's such a high percentage of those people in the background who then, when they're ready, come forward and say, hey, I'm ready now. Let's do this together.
Yeah, we want to make it easy with them. So yeah, create that content, people.
Yeah, exactly. Anita, thank you so much. For anyone that wants to know more about your content or wants to go and check you out on Instagram and LinkedIn and get some inspiration, where's the best place for them to find you?
Both, so whatever suits them. So I'm on Instagram as @it's Anita Popat, and I'm on LinkedIn as Anita Popat. So I would love to connect with you on either of those.
Wonderful. And again, I'll put those links in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. I've loved the conversation. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you took away as much value as I did. If you enjoyed the show, then I'd love it if you could let me know by leaving a review on iTunes. And why not help others grow and succeed alongside you by sharing this episode with your network and business besties. There are a lot more tools, tips, and insights coming up for you in the next episode, so don't miss next week's show. Or better still, subscribe now so you never miss your weekly dose of inspiration. And remember to follow the new free training I've created for you to help you communicate, market, and sell your true value and enjoy attracting more of your dream clients. You'll find it at melittacampbell.com/training. I've been Melitta Campbell, business coach and value whisperer, and I look forward to seeing you again in next week's episode.